Okay, so as I mentioned before, today we're talking about the graph editor, and we're also going to get some experience and some exposure working with our first control rig with our bouncing ball. So we'll talk about both of those very directly here in a minute. Let's jump over into Canvas and look at our two major missions that we have in front of us. You're going to get some time in class to work on both of these today. We have the bouncing ball animation, and then we're also going to do a really fun one called the obstacle course, which is ultimately your first opportunity to create a really direct short film that tackles the narrative of our little bouncing ball. Let's just run over to Canvas real fast, take a look, see what we're doing. All right. GCOM 401. Let me jump into student view so my screen looks like yours. Okay, let's see. Here we go. Week 4. So, of course, we have the obstacle course, which we'll talk about in detail. I've provided you guys with the file that you're going to need for your obstacle course. This bouncing ball rig, I just realized that needs to be removed, and I'll fix that in a second. So this obstacle course here is the only thing that you need to download directly from the assignment sheet on this. We'll come back and we'll talk about that here in a second. In addition, in the bouncing ball assignment itself, I've given you guys the rig that we're going to be exploring here in a minute. Before we get to the rig, though, I want to start talking about how we're going to be using the graph editor to extend the functionality of our animation system. Because right now, the animation system that we've been practicing really doesn't give us a great opportunity to edit the speed of movement, right? Last week, we talked a lot about the dope sheet, and the dope sheet is an excellent tool to help us quickly change the location of our keyframes in our timeline, but it doesn't allow us to organically and creatively it doesn't give us the opportunity to adjust the values of the keyframes and fundamentally shift how the computer is going to be interpolating between these data sets over here in Maya. So let's just get to work. I'm going to run everything today. Let's do this. We're going to rock a little cube today. All right, and I'm going to test my luck today. I believe I have officially smashed the bug that was causing massive instability on my Maya. So if you'd like, you definitely can start exploring these input nodes to change like the height and weight, things that you guys have probably done on your local machine. Today, for right now, what we're going to do is that we're going to make a very simple animation. And I would encourage you to follow along, play along. Keep it simple. Don't try to use the bouncing ball rig, and definitely don't open up the obstacle course quite yet, because you're going to find that the graph editor is a complex environment. I'm going to ask you guys to think like engineers for a second. And I know that's difficult even for me, but once you start thinking like a computer and really understanding how the machine is working, the quality of our animation is going to rise. I'm a big believer that all roads lead to the graph editor. The dope sheet is really kind of a utility that allows us to flush out the basic framework for our animation. But the graph editor, at the conclusion of our time there, allows us to refine that basic framework into something that's really kind of cool. Okay? So this is where we get to go in and start flushing out the details of our animations. Now let's get some movement happening here. Very intentionally, I think I'm just going to simply move this object along its z-axis. I'm going to create a very simple animation. Let's start off by doing some work. So I want to animate this on the translate z. If I right-click on the background of that channel field, I'm just going to do key selected. Now that I have a keyframe for that channel on frame 1 of my timeline, what's the next sequential step in our process of animating here in Maya? Yeah. All things, you're absolutely right, but there's one thing that I would recommend that you do before adding another keyframe, doing the auto key toggle. Here's what I would recommend that you do. Move the playhead, okay? Because right now, the playhead's on frame 1. Any sort of change or keying that we do at this moment is going to be done to the keyframe that's on frame 1. We don't want to do that. We want to leave this keyframe and the current value that's inside of it as is. So I'm going to advance my playhead, and I'll simply just do to frame 48, okay? And now that my playhead is away from the existing keyframe, I can start making some changes. And let's just do this. I like Dandy's suggestion. I want to turn on the auto key button. Pop quiz, which of those two icons in the lower right-hand corner enables auto keying? Running man or circle? Circle. Yeah, you got it. I'm a big fan of this circle. Bloop. Now our auto key system is on. So any change that I make to a channel that currently has a keyframe residing on it is going to be automatically keyed, which is what I want. So now I'm just going to move this thing over here. And the moment that I mouse up, Maya gives me a nice bit of feedback here, and it shows me that I have a keyframe on frame 1, and then another red line over here in my timeline ruler on frame 48. Okay? Let's play the timeline and see what we get. Now I'm going to reduce my play range to right about there. Let's hit play. Voila! Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Here's what I'm going to do, okay? I'm going to duplicate this object because I actually want to have two of these sitting inside of my scene that has all the exact same animation information on it. So I'm going to stop it. And we're going to use both of these small little cube animations as a framework of comparison between our work with the graph editor and its absence, okay? So I'm going to hit Command D. Okay, now I have a second cube, but what didn't get copied over when I duplicated that cube with Command D? Yeah, the animation, okay? So let me go back in time, hit undo. And now, on the duplicate menu, under Edit, we have a couple options. Command D is just a straight up duplication. And it's going to duplicate the object, but it's not going to duplicate any of its input nodes, right? It's only basically going to duplicate the geometry or the root level object information that we have selected. We have some other choices here, okay? I like to choose duplicate with special. And if you look at the options under duplicate with special, we'll get a little popover. Okay, here it is. And we have some choices. Now, duplicate with special is where we would go if we wanted to make an array of things, if we wanted to duplicate a whole series of copies or make a radial array. This is our real basic transformation window that allows us for that level of operation. But down here at the bottom, there's three really important options, okay? Duplicate input graph, input connections, and then instance leaf nodes. Now let's look at the difference between them. If we do input graph and hit apply, that's fun. Now I got, oh, I had it on 10. Let me go back in time. Thank you for that catch. Let's put this back to 1. Let's hit apply. Now on both of these, I have the keyframes, okay? So it's this input graph that's really important, okay? Because that's going to keep all the keyframe data on our channel box and the input node that's responsible for creating the actual geometry intact, okay? Without that one little checkbox enabled, bloop, okay, it's just going to be kind of a low-level duplication versus a high-level duplication. We want all those connected inputs to be duplicated as well, okay? You can also do and really complex sequences and duplication. This instance leaf nodes is going to ensure that more complex input hierarchies are also duplicated as well. But I'm going to leave it as is because now I got 2. Aha, things are looking good. They're right on top of each other, so let's just do this. I'm going to return to frame 1. Since I didn't animate any of the values on the X channel, I can move this guy exclusively up on the X. And I'll get what I want, which is something that looks not too dissimilar to this. There it is. Okay. Ta-da! So now that I have 2 cubes with the exact same keyframe information moving at the exact same speed, we can really start to go in and explore the purpose of the graph editor. Okay? The graph editor allows us to change the interpolation between these 2 values. Okay? I want to turn the lights on real fast so we can start exploring some ideas behind this. Okay? Go. All right. Warning, science content. All right. So animation, computer animations is all about plotting points along a graph and asking the computer to automatically transition between those 2 points, between those 2 data bits, okay? We're going to be working in an environment that looks like this, the graph editor, okay? It's called the graph editor specifically because we're exposing the root math that makes this entire animation on screen kind of work, okay? We're plotting points along time, okay? So down here at the bottom, the horizontal axis, what is this going to be, you think? Yeah, well, specifically, this is going to be time, okay, down here at the bottom. It's going to mirror the timeline that we have at the bottom of our interface, okay? And the vertical axis, this is value, okay? Okay, time and value. So if we say that our, at frame number 1, and we'll just have the origin of the vertical be frame number 1. At this point right here, at frame number 1, the location of our cube is at the origin of our scene, okay? So the location is 0, 0, 0, okay? And then on frame number, whatever this is over here, okay? Maybe the location of our cube or our sphere changes, okay? Changes to whatever that is. Looks like it's, let's just for illustration purposes, 0 on the x, 0 on the y, but then it's like -4, let's pretend, okay, location-wise. The computer is going to do what's called interpolating. We, as the user, create these keyframes, then the computer goes in and transitions between these 2 values. This is the core of the computer animation pipeline, this idea of interpolation, the automatic transitioning between these 2 values. And you are going to pretend for a second that this is going to be a straight line. It's not going to be a straight line because I don't have a ruler. But the defaults, we get what we see on what we have on the screen here. We get a linear interpolation. Like I said, pretend this is a straight line. There we go. A linear interpolation where we kind of evenly, and gradually go from 0, 0, 0 to 0, 0, -4, okay? So if we were to sample certain locations in here, maybe on this frame, the location of my sphere is 0, 0, -2, for example. And on this frame over here, the location is 0, 0, I don't know, -0.5, okay? The computer is figuring out where it needs to put the sphere inside this graph in order to, to hit these markers, to hit the keyframes. Okay, this is called interpolation. This is a linear interpolation where it gradually and very evenly transitions between these 2 values. What the graph editor does is expose what's called the function curve, the physical representation of the computer science behind the animation engine, okay? These function curves allow us to see how the computer is interpolating, and we do this in what's called the graph editor, okay? Now what's cool about this, and you'll see this here in a second, is that we get to monkey around with these function curves. We get to change both the slope of the curve and the tangency of the curve, or the weight of the curve, excuse me, okay? And we can completely alter the illusion of our animation by making some very, very simple corrections to the graphs, or to the function curves in the graph editor, okay? So this is the purpose of the graph editor, is to go in and to physically change the function curves to refine our animations to get what we want. In the context of what I'm about to do, I think what I want is that I want to have my little cube here slowly start and slowly end its movement, right? Rookie animators would go in and they start putting like, a dozen keyframes in here to manually hard code in the slowing of the start and stop of the movement, right? Thumbs down. You guys aren't rookie animators anymore. With the graph editor in tow, we can make this entire animation come to life without having to add an extra keyframe. We just need to change the math and the science behind how the function curves are being evaluated. Okay? Let's do it real quick. It's a whole lot of fun, and it's wicked easy. I'm going to stop my animation. And let's fire open the graph editor. You can find the graph editor in a couple different places, but the easiest place to find the graph editor, of course, is in the Windows pull-down menu, Animation Editors, and it's the first one on the list because it's the most important animation editor that we have. okay? This is the window to our success. It really is. And let's take a look at it. The graph editor can be, at times, kind of intimidating, okay? Because it seems like this magical land of information and these funny little, these funny little curves that are showing up on screen. Don't be overwhelmed by it. In every sense, what we're seeing here is a digital representation of what I drew on the board. It's a simple graph with two axes, value and time. We don't get a really great representation of time. There is a timeline up there at the top, and of course all the values are represented over here on the vertical axis right here. Okay. Now this part of our interface, don't close this down because you can make it small. You can also close down the list. Okay. Don't close that. Okay. It's going to show you what's selected, and it's going to show you the channels that have animation applied to it. Now, I was very careful when I started blocking out the animation of my little cube to only put keyframe information on the Translate Z channel. So that's the only channel that's showing up over here in my list. Okay? You can see that the graph editor color codes all of this stuff, which is really handy. It's going to continue to reinforce the red is X, green is Y, and blue is all of our Z. So here's Translate Z. Okay, you don't even really need to select it on the list. As long as the root, the parent object selected, you'll see its graph. Okay, if you look at the icons that show up in our graph editor, what would you imagine these things are? Those are our keyframes. Okay, so in the timeline at the bottom of our animation window in Maya, we see little tick marks on our ruler, if you will, our time ruler. But over here in the graph editor, we get the very common diamond shaped for our keyframes. What's neat about the graph editor and why we choose to come in here is that the graph editor ultimately allows us to very quickly go in and change value. The dope sheet allows us to change the location of our keyframes, right? It only allows us to move the keyframes in time. The graph editor allows us to do that, but it also allows us to change the value of our keyframes, okay? So I've selected my first keyframe here. I can even move my playhead forward and backwards, which is nice. So here's my first keyframe. FYI, like the dope sheet, our standard viewport navigation controls will allow us to get comfortable and change our perspective, okay? So here's the first keyframe. If I click on it, I can now move it around, and I'm just left clicking and drag. And you can see that its function curve is updating live in front of me. Okay. You can also turn on some snapping. I'll let you guys explore that. It's over here. I'll let you guys check that out. But now we can change the location by dragging left and right. So now that keyframe's position is on keyframe 13 or frame 13. But I can also change its value. Okay. And I want you to pay real close attention to the stats area up here at the top of your graph editor, because this is going to help save your bacon. Okay? This is going to help you figure out specifically the edits you're performing in the graph editor. It's kind of misleading because they don't mark it very well. And if the developers at Autodesk are listening, they should fix this. But the 13, what does that represent? Keyframe. Yeah, the current, well, not the keyframe, the current frame this keyframe is sitting on, right? So this keyframe that I'm working with is now on frame 13. I've moved it from frame 1. It's now sitting on frame 13. Okay? The value that's next to it, what is it? This is the actual keyframed value. So now we can actually go in and change the data that's inside our little keyframes. So be careful with this, okay? Be careful with this. This is like, this is like in Ghostbusters. Don't cross the streams. Only you can prevent forest fires.
What do you mean by the actual value? Like the actual graph value?
Yeah, so when you keyframe any channel inside of Maya, what you're doing is you're grabbing a value and you're saving that value in that little line, right? We're now exposing that keyframed value in that little channel box over there where it says 0.68. Originally, when I was keyframing my animation, I believed that on frame 1, I just keyframed 0 at the origin of my scene. So I could put this back to 0.
Does it say like a percentage of the total animation, or like is that what that is? Or?
No, this is the physical value, right? This is the physical value that you're saving. It's this thing. Okay? Yep. Because watch, check it out. If I put this at like, I don't know, -1, See how it changes here in the graph? And it also changes its location. Okay. For this particular example, it's position. Yeah. And I'm saying value very specifically and intentionally because we're going to be working with position values, rotation values, and scale values, right? Of course, that's either physical location, degrees of rotation, or percentages of scale. Okay, so value is kind of the word that we want to use while we're flushing all this stuff out. So be careful with your edits on the keyframes, or just at the very least, be aware of what it is that you're editing and how you're placing it inside the graph editor. This is a great, handy-dandy way of managing your data, those little input boxes. Okay. So if we look very carefully at the animation that I've created here, and I'm just going to, let's do this. I'm going to put this down here at the bottom. There we go. Make it a little bit bigger. Yes, I know I'm being a nerd and trying to like make this look pretty, but deal with it. Okay, there we go. Now we can see the graph editor and the result that we have up there at the top. Now the cool thing about working with the graph editor is that this is the environment that we can go in to change how the computer is interpolating between these two ideas. Okay. So of course we have the keyframe, which is the diamond, but check it out. We have a little line that comes out that's terminated by a little triangle. That's a tangent handle. By left-clicking and dragging on these tangent handles, we then can change the slope. Okay, I'm going to stop the animation. See? I can change the slope. Okay? Now what's cool about this, and why I want you to kind of monkey around with this for a second, is that the slope is changing the values that I'm keyframing in, or that I have keyframed in. Remember, this keyframe, the box is sitting at 0, 0, 0. Okay? The up and down axis is value. So where does this little box go before it goes to -4 on my z? It goes positive, so it's actually going to go left on screen before it goes right. I didn't keyframe that in, but by changing the slope of my function curve, I can add maybe some sort of little anticipatory moves. Check it out now. So the top one, this is the one that I'm changing at the moment. Interesting, huh? Okay. Yeah. Think of it like this, okay? Think of it like this. Maybe there's another metaphor that we can use here to help everyone figure out the graph editor, because this is weird, wacky stuff, okay? I remember I banged my head against the graph editor for a long, long time, and I remember my Obi-Wan Kenobi character in my life telling me, you got to learn the graph editor. It's like when you're learning compositing, everyone's like, you got to learn masks. Everything's masks and rotoscopes. Once you figure out masks, you'll get it, and alpha channels. And I remember sitting there scratching my head, what in the world is an alpha channel? And how do these black and white images influence the transparency of, I just couldn't figure it out for the longest time. And then I had this light bulb moment where I went, oh, where it's white, it's opaque, where it's black, it's transparent. I got it, right? And it took me some experience to get there. And same thing with the graph editor. You'll have that kind of like matrix-like moment where they go, oh, I see the code now, right? Like Neo, okay? You'll get there. Let me see if I can help you along that process a little bit. Imagine these keyframes like train stations, okay? This is train station number A, train station number B, okay? When we keyframed this out, we had a linear transition between these curves, or between these keyframes. So the path that was taken between the train stations was just straight, okay? So the train would just physically go in a straight line. By changing the tangency of our little function curves, now we're still going to go the exact same distance, but the path that we take is going to be different, okay? Now the train track is going to go up a little bit, and then eventually make its way down over to station number B, okay? Still going the same, to the same location, but how we're doing it is just different, okay? That's effectively what we're doing here when messing around with the tangencies of our keyframes, okay? So changing the slope, let's just stop this for a second. Changing the slope of our keyframe is going to allow us to change the actual movement itself, how it's moving, okay? We can see that with what we got here. It goes back, and then it goes forward. That's slope. And you can mess around with this as much as you want. Now, check it out. With a really extreme slope, what would you imagine to see now? It's actually going to overshoot the target quite quickly, right? Now, the function curve goes below the value of the next keyframe. So my train is going to leave station A, it's going to go past station B, and then eventually make its way back, okay? It's like you're on your way to Folsom, or you're on your way to Rancho Cordova, okay? And you go to Folsom, and then you come back to Rancho Cordova, okay? Let's check it out now. And then it comes back. Goes past what was keyframed, and then we hit it, okay? Now, I haven't added any more keyframes to this, right? I've just changed the interpolation of the function curves inside of my scene. The tangency, or the slope, affects the actual value that's been placed on the keys themselves. Now we have two things that we get to control here, okay? The slope and the weight, okay? The slope determines the value, kind of what we've been looking at here. But the weight will help us change the speed in which we interpolate, okay? Now I want you to look real carefully. I'm going to go back in time just 1 second. My slope here is pretty extreme. I've just hit undo a couple stages to get my function curve back to something like this. And I've chosen this one because it's not as extreme as it was before, okay? Let's play it. Look at the speed. It's still a pretty consistent speed throughout the entirety of the animation, right? Let's change the weight of it. And here, let's do this. I'm going to change the tangency, okay? Now, of course, you can customize the tangency just by left-clicking and dragging on the tangent handle, which will change the slope of our function curve. There's also a whole series of presets up here, and I'll let you explore some of these on your own. They all have very specific use case scenarios, and all they are presets. That's really all they are. Okay, you can do the exact same thing just by physically left-clicking and dragging on the tangent handles. This last one over here is called the plateau. Basically, flattens out the tangent handles. Okay. And now we're kind of back to what we had before, right? Oops. Yep, now we're back to what we had before. Let's play around with the weight of our tangent handles now, which is really just kind of a fancy word for the length of the tangent handle. If you're used to working over in like Adobe Illustrator, or you've done some vector pathing and other Adobe apps, of course this is something that we used to see that were very kind of common practice for us. We can change the slope of our tangent handles, but if you try to grab and see how I'm dragging left and right, I want to change the length of the tangent handle, or what's called in our world the weight of the tangent handle. Now it's a two-step process, okay? They turn this off because it's something that you want to do, but you want to be careful when you do it, okay? To change the weight of our curves, we actually have to convert the function curve, and this is really techie, but it is what it is, right? From a non-weighted curve to a weighted curve, okay? And we do that in the curve pull-down menu at the top of our graph editor. And it's down here at the bottom, okay? Now we want a weighted tangents, okay, or a weighted curve. Okay, let's click it again. And now my interface changes ever so slightly. And this is it's a real subtle thing, and I apologize. Here's the tangent handle. I want you to look real carefully because this is a good indication of how it's working, okay, or what type of tangents you're currently working with. So it's under the curves section, and it's down at the very, very bottom. And it's weighted tangents. The default is non-weighted tangents, okay? With non-weighted tangents, look at my tangent handle. What icon is it? A triangle, okay? And I recognize that it's very small and hard to see I don't have control over that. Okay. Once we change it to a weighted tangent, a couple things happen. First and foremost, bloop, the tangent handle grows quite significantly, and the icon at the end of the tangent handle changes from a triangle to a square. Okay? Great, nice little kind of visual reinforcer of what type of tangent you're currently working with. Same thing, I can left click and drag to change the slope, but now, check it out, I can also make it longer or smaller. Okay? And what I'm going to do, just for illustration's sakes, I'm going to make this really long, something like that. Okay? With the weight of my tangent handle super long, we're changing the speed in which this action is going to happen. Okay? We're not changing the actual action itself. If you look at the curve, it doesn't go above or below the initial keyframed value. But now look at the shape of the curve. It's really, really shallow. If this curve represents the value over time, the value of this keyframe doesn't really change all that much until it gets to right about here. And then all of a sudden, the slope is going to get real fast, and it's going to go down to this one. Okay? Let's play the animation and see what this turns out to. Slow start. And then, poof, right there at the end, okay? If you look carefully, they both start and stop at literally the exact same time, okay? But how we get there, thanks to the tangencies of our function curves, is very different from one another. Poof. My favorite saying, and every year I threaten to make a gigantic poster for my animation classes, mo keyframes, mo problems, okay? We want to try to create complex animation with as few keyframes as possible, okay? If you were in GCOM 400, we would have to hard code in our entire animation and have drawings, about 15 drawings at the beginning that slowly start to change the location of our sphere, right? We don't want to do that. We want to tell the computer to change its interpolation speed by messing around with the weight of our tangent handles, okay? Now the same goes for the other one. And we can create a very complex animation simply by changing the weight, okay? I want to take this guy and just drag it out over here, okay? Now I got this lovely little curve. Let's play it. What do you think is going to happen down here at the end? You got it. So we're going to ease out. It's going to go fast in the middle, and then it's going to ease in slowly, okay? We're still going to start and stop at the exact same time as its neighbor to the south. Let's check it out. Okay, slow or fast in the center, slow on the other side. This is the power of the graph editor. Okay, the graph editor gives us this ability, this functionality, very quickly. So there's a couple things that I want you to be aware of. Okay, first and foremost, the difference between slope and weight. Okay, the slope is the angle of the tangent handle, which is physically going to affect the value of the keyframe, and then the weight of it, how long the tangent handle is, and that's going to change how fast and how slow we transition out or into that keyframe. All right, so now that we have a real cursory understanding of how this works, let's say goodbye to our other keyframe or our other little cube here and start making it more complex, okay? I think for this one, what I want to do is I want to add a third keyframe into the mix, okay? So, and to do this, I'm going to also keyframe this along the x-axis to make kind of like a little arced movement. So instead of moving in a straight line, we're going to animate this guy along the x-axis as well. Okay, so let's do it. Key selected. My auto key system is on. And now I'm just going to go, since I want it to end in that location right there, I'm going to go to the end real fast and just make sure that key select, yep, got a keyframe there. And then right here in the midpoint, so right on frame 20, oh, we look at the wrong screen. Right there at 24, I want to key this thing, so maybe it's right up in here. Okay, sorry. So same animation now. but I've started to add a new layer into it. I think just for illustration purposes, I'm going to restore this the translation along my z, kind of back to its defaults a little bit. Okay? So I'm going to change its curve back to a non-weighted tangent, and now it's a little bit more easily understood. There we go. It's not a very far movement, so I'll zoom in so we can see it. Okay, so its animation going up is responsible for this guy down over here. Okay. All right, so if I wanted it to slowly move up along the x-axis, what do I need to do? Weight it, yeah. So we can start messing around with the length of our tangent handles, okay? Now for this particular function curve, is this a weighted or a non-weighted tangent handle? Non-weighted, because you get the triangle at the end, okay? So you can do this individually if you'd like, or you can just select the object and it'll do all the curves at the same time. But I just want to have the translate x function curve be weighted. So we'll do weighted. There it is. Okay. Excuse me. And now I can pull out on these things over here. There it is, and that's the function curve. I am playing my animation, which is nuking my performance. All right, so now it's going to slowly start to move up, then move up real fast and come to a slow. There we go. Well, let's talk about this middle one. This middle one down here is a little bit fun, okay? Because now we have to decode and break apart this function curve a little bit differently. And let's go back to the board real fast and kind of remember our metaphor of these train stations. Okay. Now our train station has moved, or our railroad tracks have been extended a little bit. So not B. We're going to add in some. We're going to do like 80 years worth of civic planning in 30 seconds. Have you guys ever noticed how hard and how difficult it is to build a train track, right?
How can you edit the size of your graph? Like for instance, you have rectangles, I have big squares.
Yeah, so the F key will focus on the selected function curve. And then also the standard viewport navigation controls will allow you to pan and zoom to. All right, so now we have a third railroad track, or a third train station into the mix. Okay. Our train leaves station A, goes into station B, gets a whole bunch of passengers, then it leaves station B and goes into station C, right? We can see that illustrated on the function curve up here. Okay. Now, before, when we just had two keyframes, managing the tangency of these tangent handles was wicked easy, right? Because there was just one, you know. But now that we have a third one, or in the context of my animation, the second keyframe, okay, since it's sandwiched, since it's the middle keyframe of the three-key sequence, it's got two tangent handles that we need to mess with, okay? When we're working with complex function curves, we need to be mindful of a very important framework called the incoming and outgoing slope. Okay, I have a keyframe. Okay, and I think I like to use the metaphor that I just described. Okay, the train is going out of station A. Choo choo. I love trains, by the way. Choo choo. Goes out of station A. Okay, out of A, and then where does it go? It goes in to station B. Picks up some passengers. Then it goes out of station B and in to station C. Okay? If we start to break apart these function curves, really there's a division kind of exactly 50% way through the curve itself. Okay? This is the outgoing This is the incoming, okay? Time in animation only moves forward. It's unfortunate that I can't move in like a fourth dimensional way, right? Anyways, Nick got it. He smiled. Anyways, all right. All right. So we go out and we go in. Now we want to be able to control the tangency of this curve on both of these sides respectively, right? Especially on this middle one. Because right now, if I was to go in and start messing around with the tangent handles on that middle keyframe, watch what happens to the slope inside the function editor, okay? Function editor, the graph editor, excuse me. What happens? Both sides are moving though. Okay? I'm affecting both sides of my function curve at the exact same time. Well, what if I want to go in and start messing with it? Okay? What if I want to go in and start messing with just one side? Maybe I want it to be, I want to change the weight on just one side. Like maybe I want it to be really slow. The train is really slow coming into the station, and then it's got to leave pretty fast. Okay? Now, in order to do this, I need to start breaking the tangent handles away from each other. Okay? The easiest place to do that is right here, this icon. Okay? This is going to break the tangents and make each side of them independent. Please resist the muscle memory that you're bringing from all the Adobe apps. Okay? Where you just like hold down the control key and the handles are broken, right? That's going to, say goodbye to that workflow. Okay? It's a little bit more manual here inside of Maya. Okay? And then once again, check it out. Our tangent handles change how they're being drawn in the interface, the little dashed lines. And now I can control them however I'd like. Okay? I can even use some of these handy dandy presets. Okay? I can flatten just that one out. Okay? Or I can make this one linear. Okay? We can completely change how this works. Now it's slowly going to leave quickly, and then let's get a little bit more entertaining on this one. Let's have it slowly enter station B. Okay, let's see what it looks like now. Shoot, I could even have it basically stop at station B if I wanted, just by changing the weight of my tangent handles down here at the bottom. It's not going to stop completely, but it will come to a crawl, and then comes back down quickly. This is the power of the graph editor. Okay? We can make very complex animations from just a couple keyframes. Okay? The graph editor is all about speed, how fast our little box is going through its interpolation. Okay? It's all about speed. An idea that's going to be directly applied to our lab assignment this week. Okay? You've done it a million times. You're going to do it a couple more times as animators. We're going to do the bouncing ball animation once again. Okay? But this time, what we're going to do is that we're going to be using our computer tools and, of course, the graph editor to give us the illusion that we're after. Okay? So let me show you a couple things that I want you to look at for our bouncing ball. Let's stop the animation. Before I walk away, any questions on the graph editor? Yes, sir.
Are you able to input keyframes on the graph editor, or is that all on the timeline?
So the question is, are you able to input or create keyframes?
Yeah,
Create keyframes. Yeah. So this is just what you are seeing is your timeline, just displayed in a different view. Okay. So our same kind of animation pipeline is still going here. I can if I wanted, I'm on frame 11. Okay. Bloop, key selected. Boom. Now that keyframe shows up down over here. Okay. Same thing. Nothing's really changed in that regard.
Okay, so there's no like button inside the graph editor.
There may be. Let's find out. I'm kind of old school, but here's add key tool. So explore some of these. I think they may be helpful.
Okay.
Yep.
So something I noticed when I was playing around with this earlier this week is that when you do a rotation, like a 360, like in the middle of the graph, it doesn't continue to the end of it. Like both points will have, both the start and the end point will have 0. And so
Spin back.
And I noticed that I'd have to like go and like fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Is
How'd you
there a
fix it?
way- Well, I would just go and then I would just either like put 360 into it, into the
Channel box.
and then or I would do like a 180 in the middle and then like 360 in the
Yeah.
Just super complicated. Yeah.
The solution is not much easier. Okay. Well, let's kind of prototype what Sebastian was kind of fighting here. All right. So let's do rotation Y. Okay. I'm just going to key rotation Y, and then I'll go to frame 48, and let's make it go 360. Okay. So there's the function curve for rotation Y, and let's just look at it. Now it spins. Okay. Here, let's help our understanding of this a little bit and just reduce. Let's unify my tangents. Oops, sorry, clicked on the wrong one. Now they're unified. And let's flatten them out. There we go. There we go. That's a little bit better to understand than what we had before. Okay, so walk me through what you were specifically trying to accomplish.
So I would basically I wanted it to like right in the middle, just do a 360, and then have it just like finish at the end in that position. But it would end up being the point for Y in this case would be 0, and so it would just rotate back around. So I wanted it to stay in that 360 position where it ended originally.
Got it.
In the middle.
So you want it to do its entire animation?
No. So by the middle point, it's already done a spin.
So by here it's done is 360?
Yeah. And
Got
then
it.
just like goes down.
Yep. Got it. Okay, cool. So let's change the location of that keyframe to 24, which is the middle point for this animation. Okay. Okay. Now, a couple things that may be different, and without seeing your timeline, it's impossible for me to know specifically what was going on. But one thing to note about rotation is that these are degrees of rotation, right? This is not a percentage of rotation. These are physical degrees, okay? So if you rotated 0, 360, and then 0, that means it spun counterclockwise, 360, and then it went 360 back to 0, right? If you wanted to spin twice, what value would we put in there? 720, right? Or if we wanted it to spin counterclockwise, negative 360. Yeah, go ahead.
So in the graph editor, I can't move my keyframes. It just doesn't let me move.
It doesn't let you move them. Okay. Let's see.
I was able to, but now it's just.
Okay.
It makes me. It tries to select something, like it opens the highlight box.
So if you click on,
Multiple things.
okay.
That's all it does.
All right. Let's figure that out during lab. See if we can find a solution for that for sure. Okay. Let's kind of return to Canvas just for a second here and begin working with our bouncing ball. Okay. Because we're going to be recreating the bouncing ball animation for this week's homework assignment. Okay. Or for this week's lab assignment. So here's how the big mission here is to have our object bounce a couple different times. Okay. Let's plot out, storyboard out our animation real fast. And then we'll take a look at how we're going to manifest that using the rig and the graph editor. Okay, so this is the big picture idea. This is the ground plane, or the grid. Okay, and we want our ball to go wee, bonk, woo, bonk. Okay, that's the goal. That's the goal. Now, where are we going to put keyframes in here? Let's practice our keyframing system that we learned in GCOM 400. Okay, we only place keyframes where? Or where do we place keyframes at English? Crucial moments, storytelling moments. Okay, if the audience was to exclusively see the keyframes, they'd still get the gist of it, right? So we would absolutely need to see a keyframe here, 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 and so on and so forth, right? That's it. the world of computer animation, we may be able to eliminate those, okay? By editing the function curves, we may be able to create a movement arc that's not tied to a keyframe, but I'll let you guys experiment with that, okay? The graph editor is going to allow us to get these little spikes of movement down here. Because as we've practiced before, our ball is going to be moving pretty slow at the top of its arc, right? And then once it hits down here, it'll do some squash and stretch. We'll talk about that here in a second. But it's still going to be moving pretty fast as it hits the ground. And then at the top of the arcs, it's going to slow, right? So it's going to be slow at the top of its arc, but fast down where it strikes the ground, okay? That change in speed is only really accomplishable through the graph editor, okay? By changing the tangency of the function curves, okay? So that's the big picture idea of what it is that we're trying to establish. Let's look at the control rig. This is our first exposure to a control rig here inside of Maya. I didn't make this, so I can't take credit for it. It's the ultimate ball rig. This has been around for a while. Let's open it up real fast. Oh, is it a RAR? Do we not have the ability to do RARs? No way. Okay. Here's what I can do. Let me open it up, and I'll reload it to Canvas real fast, and then that way you guys can download and start working on it today. So give me 2 seconds. I didn't realize that the Mac OS wasn't able to do. Okay, let's see if it works now. You got to refresh your page because I really did make an update to the link.
Yeah, I got a zip file now.
Great. There it is. Okay. All right. All right, all right. So let's take a look at this little cool rig. It's a lot of fun. As you can imagine, there's a lot going on in here. And let's just take a second to experiment and explore what we're working with here. Okay. So inside of this rig, there's a whole series of control locators, and I recognize directly that it's next to impossible to see this color purple. Okay. I didn't make this rig, by the way. It's linked in Canvas. Okay. I would recommend you going and checking this out. If you go to the root page of Canvas, they have someone posted to create this really great library of free animation rigs that work in Maya. Okay, so go check this out. You can find this ultimate ball rig on this website right here. Oh, it's not secure, so this is where you go. This is the actual link itself. Yeah, check it out. There's actually a lot of really great stuff in here. So check it out. Most of it's free, although you can buy a couple rigs here and there. We're going to be coming back to this website a couple times to get some more rigs. It's one of the cool things about playing with Maya is that there's a lot of really great animation rigs out there for free. All right, let's jump back over and take a look at this rig itself. Now, rigs are really nothing more than a whole series of hierarchical elements all glued together, okay? This big ring in the center, this is going to allow us to change the location of the ball. However, if we were to grab this top one, check it out. You're welcome. Bloom, 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 okay? Same with this bottom one, so you can do a little squash and stretch, go in the other direction as well. I don't think, you don't necessarily have to use this big green guy, although you can as well, okay? So really, the one that you want to make sure that you move, okay, is this big ring in the center. The rings of Saturn. The squash and stretchers at the bottom are just move, okay? So I'm just hitting the move tool, and we can start doing some squash and stretch, okay? So now that we've got a really complex animation rig, we want to make sure that we're going through our animation sequence correctly, okay? Squash and stretch is important, but it's something that we should think of kind of during maybe the second pass. It's a detail that we want to start blocking in. What's the first series of keyframes we should look to establish for our bouncing ball animation? Yeah, you got it. So like up and down, left and right. Translation Z, and then translation Y, okay? Where is it going, backwards and forward inside the scene, and how high are each of the arcs going to be? That's the first thing that we should nail down, okay? Once we have that established, we go back in and we do another pass. And what's that next pass going to allow us to do? Maybe that's a good time to look at some squash and stretch or rotation. One of the things that I'm going to let you guys experiment and explore is the purpose of this big arrow down here at the bottom, okay? Because you can keyframe that. But I think, if I remember correctly, yeah, the big ring in the center is where you rotate. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge, okay? Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Okay, a little bit more explicit. I would put all of my position keyframes on the big triangle down here at the bottom. And then I'd put all my rotation keyframes on this one, okay? And then the top and the bottom, depending on where your little ball is, this is where I'd start to pancake out and get my squash and stretch, okay? Squash and stretch. The stretch is also really important.
So those are all different keyframes? Like
Yeah.
You can make different keyframes?
There's going to be about 80 keyframes on this assignment.
No, but like if you squash the ball, that's a different keyframe than moving at the same time.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's
Yeah, absolutely. Do this in passes. Animation gets really, really difficult if you try to like brute force it, right? I'm going to do everything all at once, right? I'm only going to make, I'm going to do, figure it. Don't do it. You just do it in passes. Segment it out. Do all the position keyframes first. Then do all the rotation keyframes. Then do all the squash and stretch keyframes. Then go into your graph editor and start refining how all of these things work together, okay? Animation is a series of passes. If you work in passes, it gets a whole lot easier, a whole lot faster. Make sense? Everyone's understanding the general gist of it? Okay, ready, set, go. Let's do it.
How long should be the animation?
However you want. I'm not going to put a time limit. It's probably realistically going to be about 100 frames. Somewhere right around there. Yep. Yes, sir. Of course. Okay, so I'm sorry that the projector is out. However, we can still work. We can still figure this out. So one of the challenges that we have when it comes to rendering out all of our pictures from Maya is the product itself. It's the image sequence, right? And in the grand context of things, we want this image sequence. That's exactly the right workflow for us, okay? However, it does add another layer into it because we now can't upload an image sequence to YouTube, right? You can't really do a whole lot with an image sequence. We need to get into a movie format. So we're looking to get into an .mp4 or a .mov, right? So we need to convert these image sequences into a movie format. And luckily for us, it's really, really, really easy, okay? So here's what I want you to do. Down in your, well, actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure if it's in the doc. We're going to be using a program called Media Encoder, and it doesn't appear to be down in the doc. So if you, at the top of the screen where it says Go, okay, hit on the Applications button. The Applications, oh, it's no, there it is, down here at the bottom, Applications. In the Go pull-down menu at the top of the screen. And I apologize, this is not in Maya, by the way. We're not in Maya, okay? So everyone get out of Maya for a second. Go to the top of the screen where it says Go. Find your Applications folder. And then once again, we're going to navigate to the very, very top of that Finder window where you will see a subfolder called Media Encoder CC 2018. Okay? It's an Adobe app. Just double-click on the application. You'll go ahead and launch it. Media Encoder is a one-trick pony. Okay? Yeah, Media Encoder is purpose-built to compress and transcode video. Okay? That's its exclusive function, right? I'm a big fan of using the right tool for the job, right? There are other applications out there that can do very similar things, but Media Encoder is entirely designed for what it is that we're about to ask us to do, okay? To take an image format and then to transcode it into something else, okay? Now, one other thing, Media Encoder is a beast of an app, and you'll see this on the live stream. It takes a while to load, okay? It takes a good couple beats. It's got a huge architecture of computer science on the back end that's running this thing, right? So be patient with it, give it some love, let it open. Did you find it?
Yep.
So what we're, it's that one right there, in that folder. Yep. Go in there. And then there's the app itself. Yep. So I'm looking around the room, and a lot of folks are up and running. For those of you that are on PCs, this is part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. There is a PC equivalent that's awesome, okay? So go check it out. It's something that you're going to want to use. This is another one of kind of our professional applications that we want to work with, okay? Now, while we wait for other folks to have Media Encoder launch, look at the folder of files that I gave to you. This is just an image sequence. It's a pretty basic image sequence, just a silly little teapot rolling across an image plane. It's not too magical, right? But we want to take this image sequence and physically compress it into a movie file. Get it out of that image sequence world and into a file that we then can put onto YouTube, okay? Or share with inside of our professional team, okay? Image sequences are great, but they're great because now it's just images, okay? They're just files, right? It doesn't take any proprietary, technology to look at a whole series of files, but we need to get it into a movie file real fast. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. We're going to import the image sequence into Media Encoder, and it looks like everyone's generally up and running. Now, inside of Media Encoder, there's basically 4 areas, okay? I want to draw your attention to the kind of the upper right-hand quadrant. And inside that upper right-hand quadrant, you're going to see something called the Q, okay? And there's going to be a little plus sign, okay? Click on that little plus sign, okay? This is going to ask you to navigate to a file. And we want to navigate to the image sequence that's just sitting on our desktop. Okay, now before you go clicky-click, so travel to your desktop, do not click on the folder. Good timing. Meredith was about to drag the folder in, okay? Don't click on the folder, okay? Open the folder.
Is it on every desktop?
It should be. Who doesn't have it?
No.
Do you not have it on yours?
No.
Okay, we'll come back. We'll get it, make sure. Does anyone else not have this folder of files? I know why it wasn't blasted to yours. Let me just do it real fast. I think that machine was asleep, and it doesn't send files to machines that are asleep. Sebastian, real fast, in the upper right-hand corner of your computer screen, there should be a number, a computer number. 16. Let me just give it to you real fast, that way you can play along as well. Okay. Just takes a second. It's on its way. It'll be there probably in about now. Great. All right, back to Media Encoder. So when you click on the little plus sign, you're going to try to import a file into the app, okay? Navigate to where the folder is, but I want you to double click on the folder, which will expand the folder. And here's what we want to do. We just want to select the first file in the image sequence. We don't need to select all of them. Media Encoder is a pretty smart app, okay? Remember, it's purpose-built for our world. It has scanned that folder, and it's found every single file in there, right? And it's going to recognize that this is a sequence of images, okay? And it's going to treat it as such, okay? So let's hit open. Then over in your queue, and you'll see this on the live stream, you'll see a preset. So everyone have it in there? Okay, great. Did you load it in? Load in the image? No, okay, so go over here, click on the plus sign. Once the little OS Finder window pops up, navigate to your desktop. Yep. Now click just on the first one in there. And it's going to do the rest for you. It's a pretty smart app. Now the next thing that we need to do is ensure two things, okay? First and foremost, that the frame rate has been preserved, that it's the correct frame rate. Because Media Encoder is going to guess. It's just going to see a whole folder of images. It doesn't know what frame rate to play back this sequence as. So we need to ensure that it's interpreting the footage correctly, okay? And the way we do this is really easy. On that line in your queue, if you were to simply just right-click on it, not right-click on it, I'm sorry. Not on the preset, the blue, but it should say teapot anim and then brackets, the number, p.png. If you were to right-click there, we want to choose interpret footage, okay? You'll get a little popover, and you'll see, check it out. It says frame rate, use frame rate from file 29.97. We don't want it at 29.97. What do we want our frame rate to be? 24. So we want to choose the second option, assume this frame rate. 24, okay? In addition, before you hit OK, at the bottom of that exact same window, there's another option that we want to choose, and that's ignore alpha channel. Okay? These images, the PNG file format allows us to embed a transparency channel into the picture. Okay? So we want to ignore that. We want to ignore that. We don't want any sort of transparency in the file, and then we can hit OK. And then, really, there's just one final thing that we have to do before we hit that gigantic play button. Vince, you had a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, great. Cool.
I was brushing my hair.
Brushing your hair. I get it. So hit cancel and you're in the wrong area.
I know.
Okay. No. Clicking on the wrong thing. Click on that.
Oh.
Yeah.
How I changed
Right click.
that format thing?
Yeah.
we did?
So right click up here.
Here?
Where it says teapot. There you go. Interpret footage. And make sure you're assuming a frame rate of 24 frames a second and that you've chosen ignore alpha channel. You can hit OK if you've done both of those. Okay? The last thing that you need to do, okay, is on the output file section, the blue text, just really know where you're saving the file. Okay? We're going to use the basic H.264 preset, which is a great preset. Every single video on the web these days, it gets automatically compressed, unbeknownst to you, into the H.264 preset, okay? YouTube was the first company that did this. They said, this is the industry standard. If you give us a video that's out of our specification, we're going to compress it for you. We're going to transcode it for you, okay? Have you ever wondered why sometimes when you're uploading things to YouTube, it uploads like that, and other times it takes forever to upload? It's not your connection speed. It means that that file, that video, is out of sync with its properties, and it's transcoding it for you on the back end on the YouTube servers. It's pretty rad. YouTube takes care of us, which is nice. I appreciate that from the gooks. Okay. Anywho, know where you're saving your file. Okay. I'm going to put mine back on my desktop. And what it's going to create is an MP4. Now the last step is that we got to hit the gigantic green play button in the upper right hand corner of that window, and it will start to physically transcode this image sequence into a .mp4. Okay? If you know where you've saved your file, or if you remember, it should pop up onto your desktop. Double click on it, check it out. It should open in the QuickTime Player, and you now have a .mp4 that can be saved just about anywhere. Yeah, you're good to go? Yep.
You have specific settings that you had for it?
Let's see, I use the default. The default preset's pretty good. So let's see what we got here. 24 frames a second.
Square pixels?
It is square pixels.
Okay. This is all good.
Yeah, it's fine. Hit OK. Did you interpret the footage? Yeah, hit OK. This is good. But right click on the teapot.anim right above it.
Okay.
Right click.
Okay.
Interpret footage. Assume frame rate of 24. Then also ignore alpha channel.
Wait.
Yeah, assume this frame rate, and now put 24 in there.
Oh, okay. And ignore. Oh.
There you go. Know where you're saving, hit the play button, and you should be done. Okay?
How do I choose where it's saved again?
Yeah, so if you click on the blue word over here, this text, yeah, now you can choose where it's going to save it. Was everyone able to compress it? Sorry, Nick. Everyone able to compress the video? Did you get it?
Yeah, I figured this out last night.
Oh, okay, great. Great. All right, Adriana.
I accidentally clicked.
Okay.
Yeah, I started trying to take it off.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so here's what you could do. If you hold down the Shift key and then click on that third one, or on that fourth one, hold down Shift. Now click on that one down there. See that select them all? Hit the minus key. There we go. Are you sure? Yeah, delete it. Let's start it over again. This time, oh, I see what you did. Okay, this time just grab the first one. Just click on it and hit open. See how it loaded it as one image file? Keep going. Do you remember, it's two things that we got to do. Yes, you're so close. But click here, right click on the word. There it is. Interpret footage, right. There you go. Keep going. Did you get it?
Yeah, I know how to do that.
Great.
So what kind of format do you need to send?
For the bouncing ball, just a play blast. That's all you need. Yep. All right. So this is how we're going to be turning in the remainder of all of our files for the rest of the semester. So if you have any questions, definitely come find me, okay? Or the folks over in the design lab. This isn't something that's exclusive to this class. We do this in all the animation classes, so we're pretty good at making image sequences into MP4s these days. Randall. Okay. What can I help you with?
I think I've turned everything into before.
Oh yeah. Okay. So over here, do Command A. It's going to select all the files. Okay, and I hit the gigantic minus sign. We're going to start over. There you go. Now this time, let's do the plus symbol again. Go find that folder.
I think I put them all in the same
That's
folder.
fine. just grab the first one, and the rest of them will be ignored. Just don't worry about it. Yeah. There we go. Okay, let's interpret the footage.
How'd you get it
Yeah,
to
it's
say,
that one right there. Yep.
Oh, see, it didn't pop up last time right here.
All right, good.
That's all I can say.
So assume this frame rate, 24. And then also, oh, there's one more thing we want to change in that section. That's ignore alpha. Yeah. Now just be aware of where you're saving it.
Oh, that was it?
That's it. Hit the play button. You're ready to go. Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. But there is kind of an extra sequential step that we have to go through to get this all hooked in. Okay. Lastly, let's look at the homework file. Now, all of you guys have access to this on Canvas. For this week's homework assignment, you're going to be doing the obstacle course. Okay? I refreshed, while you guys were on break, I went ahead and refreshed the obstacle course. The file, the link to the bouncing ball rig was broken, so I went ahead and fixed that. So the whole idea behind this assignment is that we're going to start merging sets and actors together with each other. The obstacle course is your environment. This is the thing that we want to start with. I can see that a couple of you guys have already opened up the project file. It's just a fun little obstacle course. Feel free to change it. If you want to move these platforms around, go crazy with it. There's no reason not to. If you want to duplicate and add more, it is literally your playground. Okay? Now the big picture narrative that we're trying to create here with this animation is some sort of small story about our little character navigating this obstacle course, okay? And it's up to you and your imagination as to what this animation is going to look like. It can either hit all the, it can hit all of the objects in the obstacle course, or it can hit some. But this is a playground for you to tell a small story about a character's journey through an obstacle course, okay? You're free to animate whatever you'd like in here. If you want to animate some of the obstacles, go crazy. I think that's great. If you want to animate your cameras, go crazy. I think that's great, okay? This is really an opportunity for you to flex your storytelling ability with the basic computer animation tool set, okay? However, I still want you to continue to reinforce your understanding of squash and stretch, arcs, and timing, the things that we've been talking about over the last couple of weeks. This is really kind of a conclusion of that module before we start jumping into legit character animation next week, okay? So this is kind of our first little toe, if you will, into the world of character animation. The rig that we've been playing around with for the bouncing ball should be imported into the obstacle course. That way you can start marrying both of these projects together instead of Maya, okay? The squash and stretch functionality of the bouncing ball rig that we were using provides us with a great opportunity to do character, okay? Even simple squash and stretch we can produce really great characters with simple squash and stretch. So take that opportunity that's in front of you, okay? Take us on a little journey. Bring us into the emotional struggle of your bouncing ball as it goes through the obstacle course. It can be, you can actually create a nice little short film from it, right? You have 240 frames to play with, okay? So a good 10 seconds. It can't be shorter or longer. It's a hard deadline, okay? So you get 10 seconds to plot all this out. Now, over the next week, as you start to go through this, remember our animation sequence. Figure out the keyframes for the position first, okay? Then, what's next? Yeah, or the in-betweens. The computer's often going to do the in-betweens for us. Rotation. Do it in passes, okay? It's going to be easier for your brain to understand how these keyframes are influencing the overall animation if you do it in passes, okay? And then do squash and stretch at the end, okay? If it doesn't work in that first pass, it's not going to work at the third pass when we get to squash and stretch. So this gives us a really great edit point for us to very quickly go back in and make some adjustments. I can see that Pedro has already started to, that's fine, you're doing great. He's already started to import some stuff in. You may want to play around with scale a little bit before you go to, that's a gigantic ball in relationship to the set itself, okay? So I'll let you guys continue to experiment and play around with it. Also, I want you to practice your rendering a little bit on this animation as well. So you're going to do a full-blown Maya render, okay? So place a light in there, see what you get, okay? We're not going to do the play blast like we did last week. I want you to do a full-blown Maya render. And you're also going to be handing in a .mp4 of this file. So you're going to need to take that image sequence over to Media Encoder like we just did and pop out an MP4.
So we're gonna render it in PNG and then take it into the...
Over into Media Encoder. Yeah, you got it. You could render it in PNG or JPEG, 6 to 1, half a dozen to another.
Okay.
Yeah, either one works. I'm a PNG guy, but some JPEGs are just fine too. You're not going to be giving me your image sequence, so I really don't care. Yes, sir.
Show me how to render it again. Well, not from the encoder, but to turn into a file with the pictures and all.
Yeah, you got it. So the part that snags people when rendering animations inside of Maya, and this will be our last thing before we get out of here, and I apologize you guys can't see this on the board, but if we were to go into our render settings, okay, there's a couple of things that we need to do, okay? First and foremost is under the file output section of our render settings, okay? That's the part that gets everyone, right? Because the default is for a single frame, okay? And if you look at Pedro, or specifically, let's see, yeah, frame animation extension, okay? Yeah, you have it right. If it says single frame in that animation extension thing, it's only going to render out a single frame, okay? In addition, right below that, there's going to be a range of frames that you need to determine. The default's what, for those of you that are looking at it? 1 through 10, okay? So you need to go in and change that from 1 to 240 so it renders out the totality of our animation, okay? And then it's just as simple as going into the render pull-down menu and do render sequence. Yeah. Okay. So if we were to go into the rendering pull-down menus, then there's actually a pull-down menu that says render, and then we do render sequence. Okay, so you got to change the top menu, the top level, pull down menus, okay, into rendering, and then it says render sequence. You'll see this on the live stream. And again, I apologize for the projector not working. It's out of my hands. Okay.
And then just find where I want to save it and then hit render sequence. Okay, got it.
The other thing you may want to change, depending on the computer, is the file format that you render into, which is also in your render settings. Okay. It's all in there, all in that exact same little bundled area, okay? And that will get us going. Be prepared for a couple hours of rendering on this. So budget your time over the next week, okay? Something of this length, 240 frames, if it takes a minute to render one frame, times that by 240, that's how long it's going to take to draw this stuff, okay?
So we're in render view 1, and we'll see the final rendering button.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Go to your render settings.
Yeah, go into your render settings. It's not in the render view. There you go, render settings, first one on the list. Yeah, so when here we change the file format. We don't want Maya, IFF. Put that to like JPEG. There we go, that's great. And then here, see how it says single frame? We want that one. There you go. And also, start frame, end frame.
It just depends on however many frames you have.
Yeah, well, frame 1, we start with frame 1, right? And then we go to frame 240, okay? And the conclusion of that, then you go render sequence.
Feedback on this? Is this too much camera movement?
Yes.
Already.
Yeah. And the camera movement's way too big. It's a little jarring.
Okay.
Don't know, kind of making me feel sick a little bit. If you had smaller camera movements, okay, to kind of
More subtle, like.
Yeah, exactly. Because we want the attention to clearly be given to the foreground, not the camera movement itself. Okay, so I expect you guys are going to have questions. Please make sure you find me during office hours over the next week. I'm here to help, as are all the tutors and the coordinators over in the design lab. Have a wonderful Valentine's Day. I'll see you guys next week.